Welcome to the deep dive. Today, we're going to get our hands dirty digging into the world of digital transformation, but specifically in heavy industries.
Yeah, those sectors that rely on those big, massive physical assets.
Exactly, like mining, oil and gas, chemicals, that kind of thing.
Right, right.
And we're going way beyond just like throwing around buzzwords like Industry 4.0 and even 5.0. I've got some really interesting excerpts here from a document that really gets into like the nitty-gritty of how all this is actually playing out.
Yeah, I mean, it gets down to like the nuts and bolts of how these changes are happening.
For sure. And one of the things that really struck me is this statistic that something like 70% of companies that try to implement digital transformation, they actually fail.
Yeah, that's a pretty shocking number.
It is. And they're spending millions of dollars trying to do this. So,
Yes.
yeah. So our mission today is to help you kind of make sense of all these trends, figure out where the opportunities are, and maybe even help you avoid some of those pitfalls.
Yeah, because, it's a huge shift that's happening.
Yeah.
It's like, imagine if you took a power plant and, switched it from coal to like completely renewable energy.
Right.
It's that level of change.
It's a complete overhaul.
Yeah.
So before we get too deep into the weeds, let's just like take a step back and make sure we're all on the same page here.
Right.
What exactly is digital transformation in this context?
It's not just about slapping a bunch of sensors on everything, right?
Right.
It's really about using technology to fundamentally change how value is created and delivered. So just imagine like a mine where you've got sensors on all the equipment constantly feeding data back to a central system.
Okay.
And that system's like optimizing everything in real time, like extraction routes, worker safety, you name it.
Wow. That's a whole different world from those like clipboard checklists they probably used to use.
Oh yeah, definitely a big step forward.
Now, this document we're looking at, it points out that these asset-intensive industries, they often take a different approach to digital transformation than, say, like a tech startup.
Yeah, it's true. They're not going for like this massive overnight revolution. It's more of a bottoms-up approach.
Okay, I like that bottoms up. What does that mean?
So instead of one big overhaul, they're focusing on these smaller, more targeted innovations that they can implement quickly and start seeing a return on investment almost immediately.
Got it. So it's about proving the value of these new technologies, getting those quick wins.
Exactly. And then you use that momentum to fuel bigger changes down the road.
Makes sense. Can you give me an example of what one of these bottoms-up innovations might look like?
Sure. One area where we're seeing a lot of success is using IoT sensors and predictive analytics to improve plant uptime.
Okay.
So instead of waiting for a piece of equipment to break down, you're anticipating problems and fixing them before they even happen.
Oh, that's smart. So less downtime, lower costs, and probably even a safer work environment overall.
Exactly. It's a win-win-win.
I like it. Now, we keep hearing this term EAM, Enterprise Asset Management, but what exactly is it and how does it fit into all of this?
Yeah, EAM is all about managing and optimizing those physical assets that these industries rely on, making sure that everything's running smoothly and efficiently.
Okay.
And as technology gets more complex, EAM becomes even more important.
So it's like you can have all the fancy sensors and data in the world, but if you're not managing the assets themselves effectively, it's not going to do you much good.
Exactly. You've got to have a solid foundation in place.
Hmm.
One of the experts in the document, Graham McLeod, he really stresses that you need a mature understanding of the technology and a clear why behind any digital transformation initiative.
That's a great point. It's so easy to get caught up in all the hype and just adopt new tech for the sake of it. But if you don't have a clear strategy, it's probably going to backfire.
Exactly. It's like anything else. You need a plan. You need to know what you're trying to achieve.
And that's something that applies to everyone, even outside of these heavy industries. Whether you're thinking about bringing in a new software for your team or even just like deciding what app to download.
Oh yeah, totally. Understanding the WHY behind your choices is
Right.
crucial.
All right, so we've talked about Industry 4.0, the importance of strategy, and the role of EAM. But now I want to talk about Industry 5.0. What makes it different, and why should our listener be paying attention?
So if Industry 4.0 was all about connecting machines and automating processes, Industry 5.0 is bringing the human element back to the forefront.
Okay, interesting. So not just replacing humans entirely, but figuring out how humans and machines can work together even better.
Exactly. It's all about collaboration. One of the key concepts here is hyper-customization. So instead of mass-producing the same thing over and over, it's about tailoring products to each individual customer's needs.
Wow, that's amazing. So like imagine ordering a car that's not only your favorite color, but it's also adjusted to perfectly fit your body type and driving style.
That's the idea. And to make that happen, you need that human creativity and flexibility working hand in hand with the precision and efficiency of machines.
So robots aren't replacing those skilled workers, they're becoming their partners.
Exactly. And this is going to have a huge impact on the workforce as a whole. We're going to see job roles evolve, skills merging, and a growing need for employees who are adaptable and can learn quickly,
Sounds like the key takeaway here is adaptability for both companies and individuals.
for sure. The ability to learn, adapt, and evolve is going to be essential for anyone who wants to thrive in this new industrial landscape.
And speaking of adaptability, let's talk about the role of mobile in all of this. I mean, our listener, like most of us, probably relies on their smartphone for pretty much everything these days. So how is that same mobile power being applied to these massive industries?
Mobile solutions are transforming how tasks like maintenance, compliance, and field work are handled. Imagine a technician out in the field. Instead of having to go back to the office to file a report after inspecting a piece of equipment, they can just enter everything directly into a mobile app on their tablet or phone.
Okay, that makes sense. No more paperwork, no more delays, and probably a lot less room for error.
Exactly. And we're seeing companies that have adopted mobile technology reporting productivity improvements of up to 45%.
Wow, that's huge. But I imagine developing these apps must be a pretty big undertaking for these companies.
You're right. Developing a custom mobile app in-house can be a significant investment, costing anywhere from $250,000 to over $500,000 and taking 6 to 12 months to develop.
So what's the alternative? Are companies just out of luck if they don't have that kind of budget?
Not necessarily. There are companies that specialize in creating mobile solutions tailored for specific industries, like asset management. This can be a much more cost-effective and efficient approach, especially for those who don't have the resources to build everything from scratch.
So it's like choosing between building a custom house or going with a prefabricated model that meets your basic needs.
Yeah, that's a good analogy. Both have their pros and cons depending on your specific situation.
Okay, so the takeaway here is that mobile is no longer just a nice to have. It's a critical component of digital transformation.
Absolutely. It's enabling real-time data capture, better communication, and increased worker efficiency.
All right, so far in this deep dive, we've covered what digital transformation actually means in these asset-heavy industries. We've talked about that strategic bottoms-up approach, and we've looked at how EAM and mobile solutions are playing a crucial role.
It's a lot to take in.
It is. But stick with us, because in part two, we're going to get even deeper into how this all works, including the role of the cloud and the power of data analytics.
We'll be back after a quick break.
Welcome back to the deep dive. Before the break, we were just getting into how mobile solutions are really changing the game for workers in industries like mining and oil and gas.
Yeah, it's like giving them a whole new level of connectivity and power right there in their pockets.
Exactly. But we were also talking about how it's not just about individual apps anymore. It's moving towards these integrated mobile platforms.
These platforms are specifically designed for these industries. So instead of having to jump between a bunch of different apps for different tasks,
Yeah, which gets so confusing.
oh yeah, it's a nightmare. It can lead to errors, delays, just a whole lot of frustration.
So these integrated platforms bring everything together in one place.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And that means better data sharing, smoother collaboration, and just a more streamlined workflow overall.
Okay, so paint me a picture here. Let's say I'm a technician working on a pipeline out in the field. How would this integrated platform actually change how I do my job?
All right, so imagine you're out there doing an inspection and you notice something that needs attention. Maybe a small crack or a leak.
Okay.
With this platform, you can instantly document everything right there on your tablet or phone. You can take photos, record voice notes, even pinpoint the exact location with GPS.
So no more scribbling notes on a piece of paper that might get lost or damaged.
Exactly. And here's where it gets really cool.
Yeah.
All that information you just captured is instantly shared with the engineers back at headquarters.
Okay.
And they can see everything in real time along with all the data feeds coming in from the pipeline itself.
So it's like everyone has this shared view of what's happening.
Exactly. Instead of trying to piece together information from separate reports and phone calls, everyone's working from the same up-to-date information.
That's going to make a huge difference in terms of response time and just overall efficiency.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
It allows for much faster problem solving, more informed decision making, and ultimately leads to a safer and more productive operation.
Now, speaking of things that are essential for these systems, we can't talk about digital transformation without talking about the cloud. It feels like everything is moving to the cloud these days. But what does that actually look like in the context of these asset-intensive industries?
Think of the cloud as the engine behind all this digital transformation. It provides the infrastructure, the scalability, the processing power needed to make all these tools and systems work seamlessly.
Okay, so can you give me a concrete example of how the cloud is being used in these industries?
Sure, one big area is EAM enterprise asset management companies are moving their entire EAM systems to the cloud.
So instead of having all that data and software stored on servers in some back room, they're relying on the cloud.
Exactly. And that shift brings a lot of advantages like accessibility, scalability, and always having the latest and greatest tools at your disposal.
So you're saying that with a cloud-based EAM platform, companies can access their data and systems from anywhere in the world?
Exactly. And they can scale their operations up or down as needed without having to worry about buying and maintaining a bunch of expensive hardware.
That makes a lot of sense, especially for companies that have operations in multiple locations or maybe in remote areas.
Right. And the cloud also opens up a whole world of possibilities when it comes to data analytics,
Mhm.
which is where things start to get really interesting.
Okay, so we've talked about collecting all this data from sensors and mobile devices, and now it's time to actually put that data to work.
Exactly. It's about going from reactive to proactive. Instead of waiting for something to break down, you can use data to anticipate problems and prevent them from happening in the first place.
That's where predictive maintenance comes in, right? We talked about it briefly before, but can you give me a real-world example of how it works?
Sure, imagine an oil refinery that has sensors monitoring all their critical equipment. Things like temperature, pressure, vibration, you name it.
Okay.
All that data is being streamed to the cloud and analyzed in real time. And when the system detects patterns that suggest a piece of equipment is about to fail,
It sends out an alert.
exactly. So the maintenance team can address the issue before it causes a major shutdown.
That sounds incredibly valuable. But what about the human element here? Are we relying too much on these algorithms? What if they get it wrong?
That's a good point. Predictive maintenance isn't foolproof. It's still important to have skilled technicians who can diagnose problems and make those judgment calls.
So it's not about replacing human expertise, but about augmenting it with data-driven insights.
Exactly. And predictive maintenance is just one example of how data analytics can be used. We're also seeing it being applied to optimize production processes, improve safety protocols, and even create entirely new business models.
Okay, now we're talking about some serious innovation. Can you give me an example of how companies are using data to create a whole new way of doing business?
Sure, let's say you have a company that manufactures industrial equipment. Traditionally, they would sell those machines to customers, and that would be the end of the transaction.
Okay.
But now with digital transformation, they can shift to a subscription-based model.
So instead of just buying the equipment outright, the customer is essentially paying for its performance and uptime.
Exactly. And the manufacturer uses data analytics to track equipment performance, predict maintenance needs, and ensure that the customer is always getting the maximum value from their subscription.
That's a really interesting model. It seems like it could be a win-win for both sides.
Definitely. And this is just one example of how companies are using data to create new revenue streams and build stronger customer relationships.
Now, with all this data flowing back and forth to the cloud, I can't help but think about security. Are these systems vulnerable to cyber attacks? It seems like a hacker's dream.
Security is absolutely crucial, and it's something that companies are taking very seriously. The good news is that cloud providers invest heavily in security measures to protect their customers' data.
Okay, so that's reassuring.
And companies are also implementing their own security protocols on top of that. So it's a multi-layered approach with everyone sharing the responsibility of keeping data safe.
It sounds like it's a constant battle staying ahead of those cyber threats.
It is. But the benefits of the cloud, in terms of scalability, flexibility, and cost savings, often outweigh the risks.
Now, before we wrap up this part, I want to bring it back to the human element. It's easy to get swept up in all the technology, but at the end of the day, it's people who are driving this transformation.
Absolutely. Technology is just a tool. It's the
Mhm.
people who decide how to use it, and it's the people who ultimately benefit from the outcomes.
So digital transformation is not about replacing people with machines. It's about empowering people to work more effectively and to solve problems in new and innovative ways.
That's a great way to put it. And I think it's important to remember that as we continue to explore the possibilities of digital transformation,
We've covered a lot of ground in this part of the deep dive. We've seen how the cloud is providing the foundation for digital transformation, how data analytics is driving a shift from reactive to proactive, and how companies are using data to create entirely new business models.
and through it all, we've emphasized that the human element is still crucial. It's about finding ways for people and technology to work together in a way that benefits everyone.
This has been an amazing deep dive. We've gone from the abstract concepts of Industry 4.0 and 5.0 to real world examples of how it's impacting everything from transportation to energy and beyond.
And we've highlighted the importance of collaboration, innovation, and always keeping the human element at the forefront of these transformations.
So, for our listeners out there, the message is clear. Digital transformation is happening and it's changing the world as we know it. By embracing these changes, fostering a culture of continuous learning, and remembering the importance of human ingenuity, we can all navigate this exciting future together. Thanks for joining us on the deep dive.